We are 4 days away from Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Last night, the Carolina Hurricanes eliminated the Montreal Canadiens in Game 5 and will now face off against the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, in today's video, we're going to preview the Stanley Cup Final. We're going to look at each of these teams. We're going to look at each of their biggest storylines, their gameplay, their strengths, their weaknesses, and we're going to ultimately come down to the conclusion who has the upper hand. So let's go ahead and do it. We're going to get right into it. First, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the storylines for each team. So we'll go over Carolina's first, and then we'll go over the Knights, and then we're going to look at each of their gameplays. That'll be the flow to this video. Okay, so some big storylines going into the Stanley Cup Final. Let's start off with the Hurricanes. So we've got Coach Rod Brind'amour. He's making his first ever Stanley Cup Final appearance as a coach. He captained the Carolina Hurricanes to their last Cup victory in 2006, and he led their team in goals. He had 12. Okay, so the Hurricanes, this is their first Cup final in 20 years. Coach Brind'amour played with Jordan Staal's older brother, Eric Staal. They were teammates back then. Another huge story with the Carolina Hurricanes is that they have lost the conference finals 3 times in the last 8 seasons. Including this season as well. Finally, they were able to break 3. Jordan Staal is playing in his first ever Cup final since he won with Pittsburgh back in 2009, playing with Sidney Crosby, Yevgeny Malkin, Chris Kunitz. It's been 17 years, and Jordan Staal is finally making a trip back to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, here is a big story that I want to really cover in this one. Okay, Frederik Andersen, goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes, has had numerous injuries over the past few seasons. I mean, he's had a concussion, he's had several knee problems, he had a blood clot at one point, and he has probably been the Hurricanes' best player, arguably. Okay, the Hurricanes have had several key players to this Cup run, but Frederik Andersen right now, 1.41 goals against average, .931 save percentage. He is dominating, okay? And I think when I watch him play, I think his key quality, or one of his biggest qualities, is his composure, okay? He's not frantically moving around. He makes a big save, and he's just calm. He's collected. He's steadfast, okay? He's played great. I mean, it goes to show how much of a veteran he is, and it's like he's been there before, right? He hasn't been this deep in the postseason. He was in Toronto for all those years, went on over to Carolina a few years ago, but the way Frederik Andersen's playing, he's playing like a veteran, okay? Speaking of veterans, let's talk about some other longtime players for the Carolina Hurricanes: Jacob Slavin, Sebastian Aho, Jordan Martinook, Andrei Svechnikov, all playing in their first ever Stanley Cup Final, and Taylor Hall, 34-year-old, only been with Carolina for a short period of time, making his first trip to the Stanley Cup Finals. So it's really good to see all of those guys in there. It's honestly really special for this group. This group has been through a lot of adversity over the past few years, and those guys are finally making it through. I think it's well-deserved. And seeing this team's group buy-in really is just super special, like I mentioned. I mean, last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, they were up against Florida, and we know how much of a dynasty team Florida was. But I just remember sitting there watching that game, and I'm like, the only players that are really doing anything are Logan Stankoven, Jordan Staal, and Jordan Martinook. And if you remember from last year, Coach Brind'amour called out some of his star players, and he was basically indirectly calling them out. And he was saying, look, if you want to win a Stanley Cup Final, your best players cannot be Jordan Martinook and Jordan Staal. Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Svechnikov weren't really doing a whole lot in that conference final round last year, but those guys have seriously come alive, and we saw that with their OT winner in Game 3 against the Montreal Canadiens. But the pieces are starting to come together a little bit for Carolina. I mean, Wayne Gretzky on the broadcast last night was talking about Keandre Miller and how good of a defenseman he has been. Now, I know he's had his hiccups every now and then in these playoffs, but defensively, he has actually played really, really, really well. And I know that he didn't have the best outing in New York, but this guy has played great defensively. Jacob Slavin looked a little weak in game one, but he has been stellar, back up to his usual status. Eric Robinson had 3 goals in the series against Montreal. They're forechecking really well. Their speed looks good. They're most effective when they're cycling it around in the offensive zone. We'll get to that later. But I think Carolina's pieces they've come together a little bit, right? We'll cover that a little bit later. Moving on to the Vegas Golden Knights, we had some big storylines for the Hurricanes. In my opinion, I think we've got some bigger ones for the Golden Knights. John Tortorella coaching in his first ever Stanley Cup final since he led the Tampa Bay Lightning, my favorite team, to their first Cup victory in 2004. Now, he turned that team around. Not many hockey fans know this, but for the first decade or so that the Lightning were around, we weren't very good. We hired John Tortorella. He completely turned our team around, turned our organization into a winning organization. I think he had 4 playoff appearances with Tampa. So the reason why I'm saying this is because this is most likely why Vegas hired him, is because he is a guy that is known to provide a spark to a team. They hired him with 8 games left, and they know that when they brought him in, hey, this is the guy that could potentially, get some energy back into our group, because we know that Vegas was losing quite a bit of games towards the end of the season. They fired Bruce Cassidy. They brought in John Tortorella, and it seems to have paid off. A couple weeks ago, I made a video about that fine that he had, $50,000 for not allowing the media to speak with the players. Now, maybe that doesn't matter for now, right? I know it has an effect on their future because they forfeited their second-round pick, but if they win the Cup, Vegas fans are going to be happy regardless. So, but definitely bringing Tortorella in there has provided the spark that this group needed. And let's see what they do in the in the Cup Finals. Let's talk about Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is another big story. We know that Marner has faced criticism a lot the past few years. All of those years he played in Toronto media criticizing him. Everybody knows the stories, him not producing well in the postseason, him not showing up. And here's the thing, I've been saying this for the past year. Mitch Marner, that guy knows how to play when it matters. It's just he's playing with the wrong fan base. You look at how he played with Team Canada. An OT winner in the Four Nations, OT winner in the Olympics against Team Czechia, and then he had the game-winning assist that set up Connor McDavid for what ended up winning the Four Nations for Canada against Team USA last year. This guy, don't sleep on him, right? And don't say that he doesn't know how to show up when it matters, because he does. And he has proven that. Right now, he's leading the league in points. 21 points. He's got 7 goals. So he's really turned it around. He's silenced a lot of critics, and I'm really happy for him. He it's always good when a player, they get away from a fan base that wasn't really, treating him very well. Maybe that's one way we could say it. And then they transition to a new team, and then they play stellar. We've seen that a couple of times through recent years. Jack Eichel is another example of that. Vegas, aiming to win their second cup in franchise history. They've been in existence for the past 9 years. This team is a winning team. They're a winning culture. They're a winning franchise. Their inaugural season, they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Lost. They won one back in 2023. They could be en route to win another one this year. I will say that a big difference from this year's Vegas team and the one from a few years ago is their decor. You think about their decor from a few years ago, there's no Nick Hague, there's no Alex Pietrangelo, there's no Alec Martinez, there's no Zach Whitecloud. That was 4 guys plus Shea Theodore and Braden McNabb. That was their decor. And now you have guys like Dylan Coghlan, Hayden Korzak. You have Rasmus Anderson, who they picked up off of a trade earlier this year. Noah Hannafin, whom they picked up a couple of years ago. This decor looks very different, yet it looks so structured. And it looks, I mentioned the word cohesive a couple of days ago, right? Like this decor looks cohesive, right? They're on the same page with each other. They know what they're doing. Rasmus Anderson has played great defensively. So has Noah Hannafin. Noah Hannafin, a former Carolina Hurricane. Little stray right there. Another big difference between this team is they don't have Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault was their Conn Smythe winner back in 2023, and he was their goal scorer. And I think the fact that he is not in that lineup anymore, yet this team, their firepower and their top lines are still scoring goals. Scoring goals. They're still tearing it up. Like I mentioned, it speaks volumes to this team's winning culture and how adamant they are about winning and how good they are at winning. Another thing as well I could say to that, they picked up Barbashev back in 2023. Okay, they couldn't cheat the cap this year, yet they're in the Cup final. My last big story for the Vegas Golden Knights, Carter Hart. He did not play at all last season. He was away because of allegations that were against him. He hasn't played in the postseason since 2020, yet he has played phenomenal in these playoffs. A 2.22 goals against average, .924 save percentage. He's played awesome. I think the goaltending for both Vegas and Carolina, I think both goaltenders have been stellar. Freddie Anderson's got 3 shutouts, but both of these guys have good numbers, and they've been playing really well for their teams. So that is some of the biggest storylines that we've got for each of these two teams. Now let's move on to the gameplay, right? Their offense, their defense. Okay, so let's look at the Hurricanes. So the Hurricanes, forechecking team. They have a lot of speed, okay? Much more of a possession team than Vegas. I mentioned earlier how they are very effective when they get the puck in the zone, they establish the zone, they cycle it around, they use the perimeter, and then they shoot. This Carolina team loves to shoot. You know, they're shooting from the slot, they're shooting from the point, they're shooting from the outside perimeter. This team loves to shoot, okay? That's probably one of Rod Brind'amour's biggest messages to them is shoot the puck, okay? They can play physical. A couple of these games, we've seen them rack up 40-plus hits in a game. Vegas can play physical as well. That's something I'll get to later. I think both of these teams can play physical, and it makes sense because Rod Brind'amour, John Tortorella is your coach. Those are two guys that, played old school hockey and knew how physical it was. So I can totally see those coaches sending that message to the guys in the locker room. The Hall, Stankoven, and Blake line has been their most productive line offensively. Those guys are fast. Those guys have got good chemistry. They forecheck really well. See, that's the thing that we see with some of these teams is that their third and fourth lines will forecheck, but then their top lines won't. Okay, well, Jackson Blake, Taylor Hall, Logan Stankoven, those guys forecheck, and they forecheck really well. Okay, now let's talk about their depth. Eric Robinson, Jordan Staal, Jordan Martinook, Will Carrier, Mark Jankowski. These guys are good depth pieces. Really good depth pieces. In my opinion, I think Vegas has the upper hand when it comes to depth. We'll talk about that once we get to them. But I think if this team's depth can continue to play like they have been playing, it's going to provide a huge key factor for them in these Stanley Cup finals. I mentioned Eric Robinson, 3 goals in that series against Montreal. He didn't have a goal in the previous 2 series. Now he's got 3 of them going into the Stanley Cup finals. Okay? So I think the main premise, the main thing that Carolina is going to do and needs to do is they need to wear down Vegas with their forecheck. They need to wear down Vegas's defensemen, okay? If they wear down Vegas's defensemen, they could discombobulate them a little bit. Okay, Vegas is very cohesive. They're very structured. However, if Carolina can use their speed, if they can cycle the puck around, it could discombobulate Vegas a little bit. Okay? And then the last thing I will say about Carolina, or last 2 things, is that they cannot take penalties. And if possible, I would love to see them better their power play. They went 2 for 19 in that series against Montreal. Not very ideal. And on the other front, they cannot take penalties. This Vegas team, a little bit more disciplined than Carolina, doesn't take as many penalties, but I would love to see Carolina better their power play a little bit. I don't think I think it's a good power play. It's a good power play. I just don't think they've been able to find the back of the net. So, all right. So that is Carolina. Let's go over Vegas. So Vegas, Carolina, good forechecking team, good possession team. Vegas, not as much. Okay, Vegas really relies on. They've got a lot of speed. They're good on the rush. Their transitions are good. Their east to west hockey is really good. I think their biggest advantage is their top lines. Their top lines have a lot of firepower, and a lot of flavor to it. Barbashev, Eichel, Dorofeev, Howden, Marner, okay? Howden, Dorofeev, each of those guys, 10 goals. Mitch Marner, 21 points. Eichel is up there on the point totals as well, okay? You could even throw Mark Stone in there. 3 points in the last 2 games ever since coming back from injury, okay? These guys can be shifted around. I should say these lines can be shifted around a little bit to change the momentum. What I mean is if they're struggling, the lines can be shifted a little bit. We've seen Tortorella do that, and it works, right? They're still pretty effective, okay? This team is very mentally strong. I mentioned that they don't take as many penalties as the Hurricanes. They're a good unit. The camaraderie is there, you can tell. They're on the same page, and they've got the same mission. They got the same mission. They've all got the same mindset, right? And they're just very mentally strong, okay? Now, I mentioned depth pieces with Carolina, and I mentioned that Vegas's was a little bit better than Carolina's, in my opinion, okay? Cole Smith, Nick Dowd, each of them have 3 goals. Colton Sissons is another big depth piece for them as well. I think their depth is a little bit more effective than Carolina's. A little bit. I think Carolina's depth players are good, but I do think that could be a little advantage with Vegas. But not counting out Carolina's depth at all. We've seen their depth, come up big in some of these games, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that is each of these 2 teams' gameplay. That is each of their, 2 storylines. I am super excited for the Stanley Cup. Personally, I really want the Hurricanes to win it just because I've never seen the Hurricanes win it before. It would be really cool to see Jacob Slavin, Sebastian Aho, Jordan Staal. It'd be really cool to see those guys win the Cup, especially the ones that have never been before. Vegas, I respect them a lot. They did win a few years ago. I'm not really too big on the same teams, going to the Cup final and winning it over and over again, except if it's the Lightning. Okay? So I think Carolina really deserves this with all of the trials they've faced over the years, the amount of times they've gone deep into the playoffs and have gotten eliminated, and they finally break through to the Cup final. I would love to see them win it, and to be honest with you, I think they've got it. My prediction for this series is Carolina in 6 games. The reason why I think this is because I just think that Carolina's forecheck is going to wear them down. I think that's exactly what they did to Montreal. Now, granted, Montreal played a lot more hockey and they were more tired, but I think if Carolina uses that strat against Vegas, I think it'll dismantle their defense and I think it'll wear them down. I think they've got the better stats offensively, both their top lines and their bottom lines. However, I think Carolina's forecheck is probably the best that we've ever seen for this core group. And so I think that they're going to wear them down pretty good. That's my prediction. They've got home ice advantage, so that'll help them out a little bit. But that is my prediction. Carolina takes this in 6 games. Well, that's going to be all, guys. Thank you so much for watching here on G Speaks Hockey. If you want to leave a comment, leave one down below. If you want more content like this, feel free to subscribe, leave a like on this video. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.